Hey everybody, I'm back with another episode, and today with me is Cristina Prioletta. She's a multi-award-winning hairstylist and educator, as well as the founder of the Connected Creative. So welcome. Thanks a lot for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you because although I'm not a hairdressing enthusiast by any means, I know that there's a lot more to what you do than just cutting hair. So I think we'll have a great conversation. And why don't you just start off by a little introduction, tell everybody who you are and what you do and how you got into the path that you're on right now with this connected creative.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you for having me. It's so great. I love connecting with people who share the same mindset. So it's always an interesting conversation. So my name is Cristina Prioletta. I've been a hairstylist for 17 years and an educator for the past 7 or 8. And I started my education journey when I got hired for Sebastian Professional, which is a branch under the Wella umbrella of education and different brands. And I was with them for 7 years, and I got some really great opportunities, such as I was able to work for New York Fashion Week for Christian Siriano, which is a huge designer. So that was a huge like check off my list because that was something that I'd wanted to do since I got into hair 17 years ago. So that was a huge accomplishment for me. And I got to teach classes. I got to assist. I was a teacher's assistant for like the first couple of years, and then they kind of gave me my own classes, and I got to do shows. And I was able to see a totally different side of hairdressing. And it's not just sitting behind the chair and you're one on one with your clients. Yes, that's like the bread and butter, but there is so much more to hair, and that part is education. And so over the years I developed a new passion. People's reaction when you're teaching them and you see someone get that aha moment and they're like, oh, that's how you do it, that's how you make a corner. It could be anything, but you really see how the connection with people and how you grow personally. It's like it just gives you this whole other sense of appreciation for the craft and what I do. And a few years ago, when we were locked in, I wasn't teaching, I wasn't really doing anything. Nobody really was, right? And I said to myself, I want to do something more. I want to do something else. And just kind of in the sense where not I want to do something else other than hair, but I want to be able to help people more. So, how can I do that? And how can I still be myself? And I'm saying that because working with brands, it's great. You get so many opportunities and great exposure. However, you do have to follow certain guidelines, which was difficult for me because I'm a very creative person, and my freedom to express myself creatively is make or break it, right? Like a lot of artists, it's like we don't like being told what to do or how to do it, or so it just got a little bored. Like I was kind of bored. And then actually Gianni was like, why don't you teach? Like you've already been teaching for a while with this brand. Why don't you do something on your own? And that was the time where you know the education online wasn't huge yet, but that excelled so quickly. And I said to myself, okay, I'm going to create this brand. I'm going to create a community around the brand, and I'm going to make it amazing. I'm going to make it me. And I'm going to use it to help people the best way that I know how. And the best way that I know how to help people is actually through, how do I say this? It's like allowing them to see their inner self and grabbing that superpower out of them and empowering someone. Basically, if I had a mirror in front of them, that's the best way I know how to help others. It's not just technical teaching. It's so much more that comes from within that a lot of people are afraid to go in, and are afraid to look at their truth, and are afraid to look at their life, and are afraid to take responsibility or accountability to where they are today. But I find that through the power of connecting with someone, and allowing them the safe space to kind of go in and see themselves like in a vulnerable state. That's where the power comes from.
Mhm.
And that's what I realized over the past few years, with creating this brand.
What do
Yeah.
you think is missing in education when it comes to like hairstylists? And I asked that from the perspective of, like you mentioned, people being able to embrace their creativity. And I know that it's a profession that has a very wide range. Like you can have the very basic, like typical barbershop stuff where people want their, very normal haircuts. But then there's also the way creative side, which can get very non-traditional. What's the balance, and what kind of clientele do you have in terms of like being more on one direction or the other?
So I think what's missing first and foremost is in education is humility. And I'm saying that because over the past few years, there were so many people that went online. So that's what I actually left out before, was that I had developed this 8-week program to help hairdressers because it was going to be all online. But then when I looked at it and I said, okay, this is way too long. Like people need they need that growth in, like, let's say half the time. So I kind of shelved that. And then I went on and created a couple of other programs, but I shelved those as well because everybody just went online. It was this insane surge of online education. The problem with that is you don't get that one-on-one with the educator, and that's what was missing the past few years in education, especially because everybody was like, "Oh, I'm just going to film myself, do a haircut, and then I'll like sell it for 50 bucks or whatever." But like, to be a teacher, to be an educator, you have to be able to touch people and you have to be able to connect with them in a relatable way. And why I say humility is lacking is because over the past few years, I have seen a lot of hairdressers become an educator on an egotistic point because everybody's looking at you, everybody's listening to you. And I've taken a few classes and I've listened in on several classes or seminars, and you don't learn anything. So I find it's really interesting that, you know, what's missing is humility and actual information.
Do you think that that has anything to do with the influencer culture that we have today on social media, and how when people start following you and you start gaining a bit of a following, like the ego comes into play a little bit, and the education part takes a backseat to the exposure and the kind of fame that comes along with it?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, there's obviously, look, like it comes with it, right? But I think that if someone's intention is pure and from the heart, then you don't give a shit about the influencer culture. You don't care who's, you know, it's not about like social media growth. Like it's not a social media strategy. This is supposed to really help people level up, make more money, improve and refine their techniques, and become a better artist overall. And I'm not saying everyone does this, but I do see it often online. And the thing about online is people have their online persona and people have their offline persona. And I have listened to educators speak online, and then I have seen or heard of them offline, and it's just like a totally different person. So I do think that that does have some type of it does have an influence on that. And I think that educators should not want to be influencers because it's something totally different. If you're an educator, it's from the heart, you really care about people and you want people to improve. If you're an influencer, that's like my own opinion of that. I could be really wrong and someone might be listening to this and being like, that's totally off. But that's the way I see it, because that's, just it's looking at it through my own lens, right?
Yeah, I would assume
Um,
that you want some sort of level of authenticity when
yeah.
somebody's
Yeah.
teaching you something. Like you want to know that you're learning from the actual person and not some persona that they're putting on, right?
Yeah, and I know it sounds really crazy, but like I've seen it, I've heard of it. So it's like it's a thing. And I think just stemming off of the authenticity, it's people are so afraid to be themselves these days. So they're like, oh, who can I relate to? Who It's always about relating to something that is outside of yourself instead of tapping in, knowing who you are, knowing how you can help people, and just being your true self, because that's what people are going to resonate with. That's what people need, is that true authenticity, no matter who you are, no matter what you do. I think that's lacking in society altogether, is that everybody's always trying to be someone else because, oh, this type of person gets more likes or more views or whatever it is, or more attention. But I think to be your true authentic self, that's like the most badass thing anybody can do, because you're being you. You can't be anyone else. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, you go to bed, you're you.
I agree that it is easier on a lot of levels to connect with people when you get the sense that they're being authentic too, as opposed to, oh, I don't really sense that, like this person might be putting on an act or something. Like you don't really want to confide in somebody like that. And the other
Right.
thing that occurred to me is that hairdressing is a very personal one-on-one relationship with
Yeah.
the customer, and you know the hairdresser. So there should be that same level of one-on-one with an educator, shouldn't there? Also with the
Mhm.
person who's learning.
Totally, totally. I have taken classes from amazing, amazing educators, and the educators that are 100% themselves, those are the ones you learn from, because
Absolutely.
they're not trying to be anybody else but themselves. And that's you can feel, you can feel and you can hear the frequency of their voice. You can feel it from them. And I think that's what people need. People need real.
Where does that come from ultimately? Do you think it's experience, or like what do the best educators have like innately within themselves, you think?
I think it's the passion for teaching, because it is really difficult. And I think you need patience, and experience definitely is a huge factor. But I think you really have to know what you're talking about, and you have to know how to break it down super, super precisely so that someone else can understand and take what you say and apply it, and have them apply it to their day to day and improve.
Absolutely. There's a
Yeah.
couple of cool things that I found on your website. You mentioned that one of your goals, in your workshops is to break limiting beliefs, which is
Yeah.
something that I have as the core message of my show. And really, this show is more for myself than it is for anybody else. You know, like it's almost an exercise in like, trying to break my own limiting beliefs to some extent. But I really relate to that message, and I wanted to drill down into that some more. So, what is it
Yeah.
about limiting beliefs that you're so passionate about trying to help people with?
Okay, so a little backstory on myself. When I was a kid, I was spoken for a lot. Come from an Italian background, so it came from a loving place, of course. If my mom ever listens to this, she's gonna be like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." But it's one of those things where it was almost a protector sort of thing. I don't really know how else to say it. But I was spoken for a lot as a kid. And I didn't know growing up, it actually gave me a complex in using my voice and understanding how to use my voice and the power that I have using my voice. And the whole mindset around the voice is like, if you don't feel your voice is powerful enough, you're not going to believe you can achieve anything. So if you feel your voice isn't strong enough, if you feel you're not loud enough, you are going to tell yourself subconsciously that I can't have that, I can't have that, I can't reach that. Because it's always like the loudest people that get what they want, that seem to break, surpass challenges or break limiting beliefs or whatever it is. But it's really something that stems from within. And I just think that a limiting belief is stems from fear. It stems from a lack of whatever, fill in the blank. And to break limiting beliefs is the most powerful thing that I think someone could really do for themselves, because their sky's the limit. There's no ceiling over anyone's head. It's what you tell yourself. It's the own bubble that you create for yourself. No one put a bubble over you. So I think once you understand your inner power and how to achieve anything that you want, it's gone.
I feel like a lot of people don't even realize that they have limiting beliefs. Is that something that
Yeah.
you've also seen?
Yeah. I think that, I I've taken so many classes, and I've connected with a lot of the, hairstylists that were in that class and got to talking, and a lot of people were saying like, "Oh no, I can't do that. I can't do that." And it's like, "What? Like, yes, you can." So when someone says I can't, when you start a sentence with I can't, you're already starting it off as a negative. So instead of saying I can't learn that haircut, you need to rephrase that, go inside, rephrase it, and tell yourself, I'm gonna learn this haircut. Because that's a positive affirmation you're telling yourself subconsciously. So it's all about reprogramming your belief systems and understanding that you can achieve anything you want, but you have to want to do it. Because breaking limiting beliefs, it doesn't just happen like poof overnight. It's something that takes years and years and years to accomplish. And you have to find a sense of self-worth and self-connection in order to do just that. Like I was saying, like growing up as a kid, I was spoken for a lot, and I broke the mold. I broke out of that mold on my own because I said, I don't want to be that person. I want to be this person. I want to do that. I want to achieve, X, Y, and Z. So I think a huge factor as well is setting your goals. Is like goal setting. Like give yourself challenges, and there's like a saying out there that says, if your goals aren't big enough, or if you no, what is it? If you set your goals and you're sleeping and you sleep at night, then they're not big enough, or something like that.
Okay.
Which, kind of makes sense. It's kind of funny, but it
Yeah,
makes sense.
there's
So
a lot to that, and I think like programming, like mental programming, has a lot to do with it. Maybe that's something that you can speak about too, since you mentioned some of the stems from like when you were growing up, how
yeah.
you learn to think in a certain way, and it's very hard to change the way you think once you've been doing it for so long. So like, what's the key to opening yourself up and getting out of that box?
I think it's being humble enough to acknowledge, and being humble enough to know that you don't know everything. And what I see a lot in hairdressing, and I can totally speak to this because I used to work in a salon, pretty big salon, and I've always loved education. I've always loved learning. I've always loved challenging myself and like overcoming that challenge and saying, yes, I did it. I surpassed, let's say, like the next level. And a lot of the times there's so many, like I can't, it's wild. There are so many hairdressers that don't take continued education classes because they don't see a point. So I think you have to humble yourself enough to say, you know what, I don't know everything. I only know what I know. And that's the limiting belief. So I think perspective has something, I mean, it has everything to do with it too. Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to be in 6 months? So to humble yourself enough and say, I don't know everything. Let me sit down and take a class. It'll bring you there.
How important is the element of community when it comes to hairdressing? Because you mentioned education, and there's often we often think about classes and groups of people learning together, and there's obviously the relationship between the student and the teacher and everything, but it's also a competitive industry to some
Mm,
degree. You're competing for clients and stuff. How do you balance that urge to like that drive to compete versus collaborating and having like that kind of holistic relationship with the rest of your field?
yeah. So community is huge. There is a huge competition aspect to it for sure. But I think if someone's approach is to take someone else's client, I think, first of all, I just think that's really shitty because I wouldn't do that to someone because there's enough business for everyone. I've always said that. I will always say that. There's no need to go in and, try to steal someone's customer that they have worked so hard to keep, let's say for 5, 10, or 15 years. I just think that's really shitty. And I think that comes from an egotistic standpoint and saying like, oh yeah, I took that person's client because they liked me better. Like, did they, or are you just really good at selling yourself? There's a big difference. And I think community based is like, so I used to work, I've been doing this for a long time, almost 20 years, and I've worked in the West Island. I'm back in the West Island. I worked in the Plateau. I worked in the heart of downtown on De La Montagne. And so I've collected clients a little from all over. But if I have a client downtown, I'm not going to be like, oh, you need to come here. I'll say no, like I'll refer other hairdressers. So I think a big part of that is just don't try and steal others' clients. Just focus on getting new clients, focus on acquiring new clients and build a loyalty. And your clientele is also like a community. So you mentioned something about how to differentiate like what type of client you want versus like the classic shop.
Hmm.
And I think what a lot of hairdressers need to do is ask themselves, who do I want as a client? So how do you get your dream client? You don't get your dream client by stealing someone else's hard work, because essentially that's what it is, right? There's so much that goes into day to day. There's so much that goes into keeping your clientele on rotation, always showing up, always being 100%, um, no, being on top of trends, keeping up with techniques. Like there's so much that goes into keeping your clientele satisfied that if someone would come along and just, snatch a client, like, yeah, I'd be really pissed. That's why I wouldn't do that to someone else. But that's me. It's like, it's different for everyone. But what a lot of people should ask themselves is, okay, what does, let's say like if you're looking for a new client, where do they work? What do they do? Are they an entrepreneur? Do they work for someone else? What kind of car do they drive? Where do they live? Where do they spend their money? What's their monthly budget on their appearance, let's say? And like, where do they hang out? Do they have a vacation home? Like, what is your ideal client? What's their life? And I've adopted that mindset, and my clientele is, I would say, 80 to 90% of them are entrepreneurs.
Interesting.
They do well for themselves. Location has a huge factor into that, but it starts with that strategy of, who do I want in my chair? So that's, you're also building a community around your clients, because then it's just word of mouth. Word of mouth, like, isn't, it's not going anywhere when it comes to hairdressing. I don't can't speak to any other field, but when it comes to hairdressing, word of mouth is like, it's your golden ticket.
And that's something that hasn't changed with the emergence of all the technology and the internet and social media. Word of mouth is still king, right?
It's still king, because if I'm a client and I go get my hair cut and I love it, and the hairdresser was amazing and the service was incredible and it's been consistent like that, yeah, I'm gonna tell everyone to go and see that person, because it's from a human person. It's not from a screen. It's not coming from an ad on Instagram. It's not coming from something else. It's coming from a person. And I think that's what people connect to as well, right? Is someone's word.
Hmm.
And I still think that holds a hell of a lot more than, a text or like an ad on Instagram. So I
Which is
think
why
that's,
I guess that's why reputation matters as well,
yeah,
right? When it comes and it ties back to what you said about not stealing somebody else's clients, and you want to be respectful and well respected at the same
yeah,
time, right? Because otherwise
definitely.
the word of mouth works both ways, doesn't it?
Exactly. Like, if here I am, building this education brand, and if I'm the hairdresser behind the chair that is going and stealing other people's clients, you think anyone's going to want to take my class? Hell no. So instead of, having that mindset of, you can just take whatever you want, it's up for grabs. Like, no, it's not. You need to respect the amount of work that people have put into their clientele over the years, because it is so hard to get someone to come back to you when there are so many hairdressers, right? And a lot of people don't know how to stand out, which in turn goes back to be your authentic self. And the right people are going to come to you because it's like a gravitational pull, right? Like I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I prefer it that way. So my clients like me for me, and that's I've built up a really strong clientele. And I've lost several clients over the past few years, and that's okay too. Like, so I think going back to what we were saying before was that hairdressers, like, you don't own your clients. You don't own your clients. So if they are unhappy and they want to try someone else, fine, great. Like, I've lost several clients, like I said, a few, for over the past few years, and like it's totally fine. And I'm, instead of being angry and upset and like, oh, they're going to see someone else, I kind of switched the message and said, you know what? Maybe it's just not a match anymore. And I'm so happy that I was able to keep them happy for as long as I did.
Right.
So when a hairdresser is acquiring a new client organically, it simply means that whoever they were going to before lost a client. But it just makes room in your clientele for the people that are meant to actually be there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's an element of dealing with rejection too, then,
Yeah.
if you do lose somebody, which could be for a variety of reasons. But how do you
Oh yeah.
is that something that's tied into your classes? Like how do you teach people to deal with that sense of rejection, or in any situation, a sense of rejection? Because for any career, there's always instances where people are being rejected. Like, what's the key, tying into the mindset that's important to deal with that?
I think one of the biggest things is know who you are and know what you bring to the table. Like, there's going to be rejection every single day in so many different ways, and you just can't let it shadow, like, take over your life. You can't let it completely ruin your day. Like, you could be upset, but you can't let it completely, like, take away all your work or anything like that, right? Like, so I think it's just staying grounded, staying strong, know who you are, know where your strengths and weaknesses are, build upon your strengths, learn new things so that your weaknesses can turn into strengths, and know what you bring to the table. So in hair, like, knowing what you bring to the table means showing up to work, having a positive attitude, leaving all of your personal shit at the door. Because when you walk in that salon, it's not about you anymore. It's about your clients, making your clients feel like $1,000,000 inside and out. So I think how people can adapt this mindset, like this structure, into their work is by doing a lot of work on themselves.
It's a really
So
interesting thing because you mentioned like leaving your own personal problems at home when you go into work. But I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like a lot of times, like in the hair salon, you get like the clients spilling their guts about everything that's happening in your life. So it's like my impression is that you end up playing the role of like psychiatrist to some degree
yeah,
as well, right? Is that
totally.
true?
Oh yeah, it's totally true. Like, if hairdressers were paid like therapists, or it would be a very different world, I think. But
So
yeah, it's totally true. Like, I've had clients sit in my chair, I've had clients cry in my chair, I've had clients say certain things that I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. It's like, it's almost like this perception that hairdressers are like like your best friend, like hairdressers are going to be like your BFF. And it's kind of like that, because over the years you do build a rapport with your clients. And I have so many of my clients that have actually become my friends. I'll do their hair for their wedding. I went to the wedding. Like, it's really nice actually, because you just keep expanding and growing and keeping those connections and those relationships alive while doing what you love. So I just think it's like a win-win across the board. And the ones that don't resonate anymore, they'll go off on their own and they'll like find someone else. And that's totally fine too. Because at the end of the day, like I said, you do want to make room for the people that are supposed to be in your chair.
What are some of the big things that you've learned from people after listening to them for years, tell their stories and problems and, positive and negative things? What are some of have you taken away any lessons from that?
Yeah. I mean, I've taken away so much over the years in terms of um, what I've actually learned recently over the past few years was to just not say anything that is related to religion and politics. It's completely off the table. I don't talk about it. I don't bring it up. I honestly don't care. Like no, because
Because
you
they're
don't know where people are. So if someone brings it up, I actually don't engage in the conversation. I will manage my way around the conversation. It's just something that I don't talk about anymore. That's the main thing that I've learned over the past few years. Also just to listen. Like hairdressing has taught me how to become a really good listener and keep certain opinions to myself. I'm a Capricorn, so I'm a very opinionated
so am
person.
I also.
So you know what it is then, right? Um, yeah, it's humbled me in many ways because of the stories that I've heard, because I've heard the struggles that certain people go through. And it's also made me really grateful because I can relate to certain stories, clients that have successful stories. Like it inspires me every single day. So yeah.
What else do you teach people about mindset? Because I know that's the core, one of the core tenets of your master class and everything is like to get the right mindset. But what are the keys to achieving the right mindset to have success?
There are so many, and it's hard to pick just a few because everybody is at such a different stage. So, what I like to do is I actually prefer teaching one on one classes just because I can really connect with that person and help them wherever they're at. So, I recently had a one on one student back at the beginning of April, and we did a 3 day masterclass. And I saw her excel from like 0 to 100 in 3 days. So, it was incredible. And at the end of the 3 days, she had such a much more confident approach to hair. She understood the technical side of things a lot more, and her actual the skill was had improved quite a bit. And so mindset is like I was saying, everybody's at a different stage individually, so it's really difficult. But my overall is finding out who you are as a person and tapping into your own superpower because we're all creative people. And tapping into your superpower is going to allow you to see where your strengths and weaknesses are. So if you're very strong in hair coloring, then continue to take hair coloring, but also take some hair cutting classes because that could turn into a strength and it'll give you more confidence. It'll boost it'll help you generate more money. It'll grow your clientele. So the mindset of growth, it's like a growth mindset, right? It's not like this is what I have to do every single day and then I'm going to be up here. Like, no, life doesn't happen like that. You can have a plan, but you might have to pivot around that. So the overall mindset structure is on growth. How do I grow? If I'm at number 1 and I want to get to number 5, I might go up and hit number 4, but I'm going to come back and hit like 2 and 3 and then go back up to 5. Like that's the whole understanding of growth. It doesn't happen like this, it happens like a roller coaster.
Right.
So I think when it comes to hair and wanting, let's say, more clients or wanting to make more money, you have to take education classes because that's the only thing that drives you forward. That's the only way to raise your prices, to earn more money, to gain more clients, to be better. So it's the growth mindset that I really talk about.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people who speak about growth mindset put it in the sense that if you're not moving forward and advancing, you're actually falling behind because those
Yeah.
around you are striving to move forward. So if you're staying at the same level, you're actually falling behind others. And I imagine it's no different for hairdressers too, right?
Definitely, definitely. Like what I'll have my students do is write down the top 5 things that they're the most grateful for in life. And it doesn't seem like much, but when you write it down and you put it out of your mind on paper and you look at it and you reread it and you're like, wow, I'm really grateful for these things, that creates this gratitude that creates inspiration. And that will allow you to work harder, want better, want to do better, and I'll have them write down their goals. There are short term goals and long term goals, right? So taking a class with me isn't just like a 3 day master class and poof, you never hear from me again. Like, I like to follow up. I want to know how you're doing. I want to know if you're making more money. I want to know how you got more clients. And I want to see if they actually learned something in my class. So I really like that. Um, I like the structure of like long-term access to me because I don't believe in like just take my class and like you'll never hear from me again. I don't like that.
Well, so
I want
then,
to I want to talk to my students. I want to know how they're doing,
so it's a
you know?
relationship that endures long after the
Yeah,
classroom is over, right?
definitely. Definitely. And I think that's part of the community. You know, if I have a client who I can't take that day, I'm going to recommend that client to my student or to that hairdresser that I used to work with years ago. I'm gonna do that because we need more humility and we need more like working together instead of working against each other or whatever it is. We
I
need
love that.
we need more of that. Yeah.
Yeah, collaboration over competition.
Yes, exactly. Collaboration over competition. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
always
we
t
need
I tie things back to the music scene. I'll use the word scene because I've played in bands a lot and like with your boyfriend Gianni too. Like I've played music with him. I know that he's super invested in the music scene, and
yeah.
one of the things that I've always found to be unfortunate is the sense of competition between bands and between artists, uh,
Mhm.
as opposed to collaboration and helping each other. And it seems on the surface sometimes like people are like, great show, that was awesome and everything. But then behind closed doors, it's like, anything you can do to stab somebody in the back. Um,
Yeah. It's like it's yeah. I mean, hair has that same thing, right? Like it's like to your face they'll be one way, but then behind closed doors like, oh my god. And it's like, really, you're still doing that? This is still a thing? Can we just be honest and genuine and real,
yeah.
you
So
know?
I think it ties in also speaking about mindset is the concept of abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset, where if you're
Yes.
if you're living in abundance, you don't have to worry about other people because like you said, there's enough to go around. And this
Yeah.
applies to literally anything, any
Yeah.
industry, any profession. When you're living in abundance, you don't have to worry about others taking from you because there's enough for everyone. Whereas if you're in
Exactly.
in living in the scarcity mindset, then you're like a wild animal, like trying to cling to scraps of food, right? Because you don't know
Yeah.
who's around the corner wanting to take something from you. So
Yeah.
yeah, I imagine that plays a role too.
Definitely, definitely. And I think, for me, like I didn't always have this mindset. I wasn't always like this. I used to have that mindset where I was like, oh, well, that scarcity mindset because I grew up with that. So I think what we're given growing up plays a huge factor in who we become, but we choose to become a certain way. So you can break the mold or you can stay in the mold. And that goes for everything and anyone. Like you can stay in the mold or you can like grow and get out of that mold. So the abundance mindset for me came through yoga, came through learning how to live in gratitude instead of always complaining about what I didn't have, because you attract what you are, right? Not what we want. So if I say, oh my God, I can't believe I don't have any clients that day, how is that going to get me more clients? It's not. You're just complaining about not having clients. So it's like I find if people shift their attitudes to adopt a grateful attitude, that that is like the little seed that blooms into the abundant life in everything.
Absolutely.
And for me it was like through yoga. Like I learned how to breathe for the first time, like really breathe properly from my core for the first time when I was 25. I'm 34. I was always breathing with like this anxiety, this like pressure, this I wasn't relaxed. I was very anxious. I have anxiety. I do. I'm like an introverted extrovert. I think that's the thing. Um, so it's like, yeah, for me, breathing, learning how to breathe, learning how to ground myself, and gaining confidence through that helped me to where I am today. So it's like a domino effect. If you do one positive thing, you're going to hit another and then another and then another. And it's just going to go like, and everything is going to become so much easier. Everything is going to have so much more meaning, and things, you're just going to gain more and more confidence in everything that you do, in every approach, the way you approach any situation, right? Instead of approaching a situation with like a anxiety and oh my god, you're going to approach it with, okay, well, how can we deal with this? How do we overcome this? So it's all mindset. It's all, how do you want to live, you
Where
know?
where did all this start for you? Was there like a spark that kind of opened your eyes to these practices, or like the yoga and the breath work and stuff like that? Where what was the beginning?
So uh past relationships were very toxic and very verbally abusive, and one day I had just had enough and I wanted to heal. Let's talk about healing for a second,
Yeah,
because I feel like healing and self-love, it's the hardest thing to achieve. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, what's healing? Like, healing is the key to life. It's like, I can't even find the words because it's everything. It's healing your mindset, it's healing your trauma, it's healing your heart, it's healing your body, it's healing your bones, it's healing your anxiety. It's like everything. And you know society has this: get up, go to work, pay the bills, get up, go to work, pay the bills. And it's like that brings stress on your body, on your energy body. That is so stressful to know that, oh, I have to wake up early because I got to go to work and I got to make dinner and I got to pay this and I got to pay that. And it's like, it doesn't end. So if you can practice, or if anyone can practice healing or meditation and connecting within, that'll just kind of set the tone, and it'll neutralize the anxiety, and it'll give you clear mind, because you can't think, you can't process with a stuffy mind, right? We need clarity.
yeah.
So I
I,
think healing, wanting to heal and admitting that, wow, I need to heal this, I need to heal that, that'll bring a sense of clarity, and that will open up the abundance, because there's so many blockages,
yeah,
right?
I think this was in the very last podcast that I recorded. She said something to the effect of the value in a cup is in its emptiness, right? When it like, and that's like a parallel to the mind, right? Like empty
Yeah.
mind means that it's able to receive after, and if your mind
Yes.
is full, and then it's like blocked,
Yeah.
everything else is too much.
Yeah, yeah. And it's everyone's, frequency, everyone's vibration. There's so many factors that we have to deal with day to day that are so small, but over time it becomes this huge factor, right? So I think just getting clarity and focusing on healing whatever aspect of yourself needs to be healed. Like, it's okay not to be okay. And that's something that we hear all the time, like it's okay not to be okay. So for me, back to what you had asked me before, was, yeah, I was in really really shitty relationships where it was like verbally abusive, it was emotionally abusive more than anything. And when I decided this is it, it was like an instant. And I just said, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I'm going to do what I have to do to get myself better because it's my life. And at a certain point, it just clicks. It
Hmm.
either clicks or it doesn't, right? And it clicked and I was like, I need to take care of myself. I was gaining weight. I was like the heaviest I'd been, like I wasn't myself. So I started eating better. I started looking into healthier foods. I started yoga. I learned how to breathe for the first time. And that, and my sister actually introduced me to yoga because I mean, obviously I knew about it, but I never thought about actually practicing it for real.
Hmm.
And for the first month that I went to those yoga classes, I cried every single class because my I was allowing myself to relax and I was releasing all of the things that no longer served me. And that's when you release all of the things that don't serve you anymore, you're making space for the things that are meant for you. And that's what people need to understand is don't hold on to the bad relationships, don't hold on to the toxicity, don't hold on to those things that are hurting you in whatever way they're hurting you. Let it go because there's something so good on the other side of that blockage that is meant for you.
Yeah, that's the sneaky thing about, stress and anxiety and traumas that you collect over time is that you don't even necessarily realize that it's accumulating until you do
Yeah.
something like that where you let go and the floodgates open and then just the wave of emotions just comes
Yeah.
out.
And there's like no stopping it either, you know? So yeah,
Yeah, but then it's the turning point where you realize,
exactly.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, look at how much I've accumulated over time and
Yeah.
I'm not going to let this happen again.
Exactly. And you know, hairdressers, we have a lot of that because our clients share with us so many stories and experiences and we go home with all of it.
Mm.
So it's like, okay, my client just told me this and that and now I have to let it go because it doesn't belong to me. So where do you let it go? Where do you release all the things that don't belong to you? You don't keep it in, otherwise you absorb that energy and then you hold on to it and you become it. So I think meditation, grounding, just living in gratitude, having a more positive outlook, and not to say like disregard the negative stuff, because looking at something that could be negative or more challenging will allow you to grow and make your mindset a little bit stronger, but not feed it so much.
Yeah, and I
Like
think
take it, accept it, and move on.
and recognizing things that are negative allow you to kind of sidestep them when you need to, right? Because if you
Yeah,
don't even acknowledge the negative, then you could be going right through it and not even realizing.
exactly. And there might be something there that you need to continue to grow.
True.
So, yeah.
I think it ties in with something else interesting that I read on your website, which is that so in your bio, you wrote that you are obsessed with fashion and strongly connected to nature, which I found super interesting. And you
Mhm.
mentioned that you fuse the two together to build your career. How do you incorporate nature into your career?
So I don't actually incorporate nature into my career. What I like to do, so the way I envision hair is an amino acid, it's fiber, it's actually dead once it grows out of your head. Um, but it's got shape and texture and it moves with the wind and it's got foundation and nature does as well. So for me, and every hairstylist is totally different, but for me, I've always resonated with mountains and trees and rocks and the color of nature and the texture like of the leaves of I don't know, a tree. And it's always inspired me to create shape and movement and texture in hair. So that's where I tie in the nature part of it. And nature allows me to ground and reconnect. So it's a little bit more of a personal approach, but I am always, how do I say this? It's always in my mind when I'm approaching a client, you know? And like, how does her is her hair very wiry? Is it very straight? Is it curly? Is it wavy? Is it fluffy? Is it, is it short? Is it long? It could be anything. So allowing, just keeping that texture in mind allows me to open up my approach when I'm dealing with clients. And the fashion part is the styling. So like, I love, love, love fashion. It's architecture, there's foundation, it moves, it's texture. Like, I'm all about that stuff. And these two very different worlds fuse together. They can fuse together because that's just me. So, it's the way that I approach hair. And in doing just that is allowed me to build a very solid clientele, because everyone is so different. So it's allowed me, let's say, like, fashion is a little bit more edgy, it's a little bit more rough, it's got a little bit more, it's a little bit more pointy,
Hmm.
I want to say, where nature is a little softer, it's a little round, it's natural. It's so by fusing those two worlds together, you can create anything, because you can create a haircut with a solid foundation, or a style like an avant-garde or editorial style with foundation, but make it soft at the same time. So it just reminds me that it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can absolutely do both.
I want to talk to you about appearances and beauty and
Yeah.
the roles that those play in people's feelings about themselves, their lives. I think everybody acknowledges that beauty is important, but
Mhm.
then there's also the concept that, looks aren't everything. It's what's inside that matters. Totally true and valid, but how you look and how you feel also have a relationship with each other. What's your
Mhm.
take on that? What's important about looking good and feeling good, and why are people drawn to that and want to, you know, play with their hair and dress nicely and stuff like that? What's the importance of beauty when it comes to individuals?
I think it comes down to confidence. When your hair looks good and when you're dressed to the nines, you feel confident and you can take on the world. But if your hair is in a messy bun and you got like cakey makeup from the night before and you're in sweats and like a loose sweater, like, no, it's not happening, you know? And I like to always use this metaphor of like the job interview, where there's two people and there's one, and they're just as equally qualified, but one shows up in like a sweatsuit with the sneakers and like the whatever hair, because they're like, oh yeah, but my talent is enough. But there's the other one that shows up, makeup, hair is done, dressed well, but they get the job.
Hmm.
And maybe they're not even technically as good, but what you're showing people is how you see yourself. It's the way you feel. Like, I have like no makeup on today, but even at work some days, like, I'm not saying, wear a fucking gown and heels or whatever. Like, you don't have to do that, but show up. And I think a lot of people will take the beauty and they'll just go super extreme with it. And what I mean by that is, they're like, it's because they look for beauty outside of themselves. And that's the problem. That's the problem. And yes, we are living in a society and a time right now where you don't have to put makeup on, you don't have to dress up. You can wear like Lululemon or whatever and still look good. But it really comes down to how you feel inside. And it may sound really weird, but I there's no right or wrong, because you can choose to show the world whatever version of you want, but that's what that person is gonna that's that version of yourself that people are gonna take, and that's what they're gonna hold on to, and that's what they're gonna perceive you as. So if you want to be respected, if you want to show up to that job interview and get that job and start taking clients, you need to show up. And that ties in with your attitude too, your mindset. You're showing your future boss, hey, there's room for me to grow. This is how I show up, this is how I respect myself, and there's nothing wrong with going to work in like like jeans and a t-shirt, or I do it all the time. But you just have to look presentable. you know? And I think a lot of the people that choose not to do that, just what I see from social media, like they seem like angry people. Like they seem like really sad, angry people, and they've given up, and you know, Seinfeld.
Oh yeah, big
You know
fan.
when Yeah, so when Jerry's like, you're telling the world, that you've given up. Like it is kind of like that,
Yeah.
and I think that, everybody's always so forgiving of everything, which is fine. I'm not. If you want to show people, if you want to show the world that you've given up, that's on you. But like, I don't know. It's kind of touchy, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like,
I think one thing also is that people are going to form their opinions of you one way or another.
yeah,
So you could be all dolled up, and two different people will look at you, and one will say, "Oh, look at her. She's got her shit together. Like she looks
yeah,
fantastic. Like she's living the dream." And the other one will go, "Oh, what a show off. Like
yeah,
why is she putting so much effort into her appearance? Like what is she trying to
that's it.
prove and stuff like that." So
Yeah,
probably comes down to what makes you feel the most comfortable and what you feel
yeah,
like the best version of yourself is,
definitely.
rather
Like it
than
comes
worrying.
down, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Like it comes down to confidence. Like if you feel great, you go out there and you be great. You go and do what you got to do for yourself. Because like you said, people are gonna make an opinion of you no matter what, and people's opinion we know don't really matter at all. But if you're gonna allow these opinions to affect you, then you obviously need to work on something.
right,
But if
exactly.
someone's opinion of you is not going to affect you because you have the confidence, you know who you are, and you know what you bring to the table, good for you.
Yeah, I guess that's the goal to strive for, is to
Right? Yeah.
be
Like
the
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
be the way that you want to be and not worry about too much about people's perceptions, because you don't really have control over those ultimately. Like everybody walks through life with their own filter in front of their eyes, which is
Yeah,
constructed by the way that what's going on in here, right?
for sure. For sure. You know?
I want to ask you about your upcoming event, New
Yes.
Era. Tell me
Yes.
about that. I want to know. I want to know all about it.
So I have been going to hair shows for 17 years, and they've always pretty much been the same. And last year, actually, I heard a song that inspired this entire event because I said, I want to do something for people. I'm building a brand and I want to do something new and fresh for the industry that's never been done before. How can I do that? And is anyone going to give a shit, even if I do something like this? So I said, let me put on a show where we're going to have amazing educators talk about technical skills. We're going to showcase our techniques. We're going to talk about business growth. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about acquiring new clients. We're going to talk about mastering consultations and customer service and everything that you need to become successful behind the chair long term. Right. And I said, okay, why is this different from any other hair show that I've been to in the past? Well, because I'm not selling products, I'm not selling any hair tools, I'm not talking about any of that because those shows already exist and we need those. But when it comes to business building, when it comes to artistic development, you need the structure, you need the strategies, and you need the right techniques, and you need the right mindset. So that's what we're going to elaborate on at the event. And yeah, the evening is going to be catered. We got cocktails, we got an after party. It's great for networking. And it's the first of many. And I named it New Eras because it's never been done before. So it's a new era of hair shows. And that's it's here to stay.
Awesome. Well, good luck with
Yeah.
that.
Thank
Um,
you.
I will put links in the description of the video for anybody who's interested in checking that out, and anybody who wants to find your stuff online, your website, and everything. Is there are there any parting words that you would like to leave? Any ideas that you would like to leave the listeners and viewers with before we wrap it up?
Um, yeah. First and foremost, it's to achieve, how can I say this? If anyone out there is looking to grow their clientele, if anyone out there is looking to expand on their skills and their knowledge behind hair, the what, the why, and the how, obviously take my class because I can definitely help with that. But also do a lot of work on your own. Like don't be afraid to look in the mirror and say, okay, we need to fix this, this, and that. So don't be afraid to try new things, listen to new people, get education from new educators, like from some fresh faces, not just the same educators that represent these big brands because it's always the same shit. It's always the same techniques, it's the same things, it's they use the same vocabulary, the same strategies. It's boring and it gets very tired at the end of the day. So learn from new people, do what scares you because if something scares you, it means you have to do it because that's where you're going to grow and that's where you're going to learn from this. Like putting this event together, I haven't slept in months. It's in 2 weeks and I'm so anxious. I'm nervous, but I'm so excited. And it's also long term. It's putting the connected creative out there. It's making a dent in this amazing already huge industry and do what scares you. Don't take no for an answer. Don't let anyone bring you down. If anyone tells you you cannot do it, you do it in silence and you show up and you show them that you did it and 10 times better than they thought you could have. You know, keep a strong mindset and don't allow anything that is outside of yourself to tell you how to do things or what you have to do or what your limit is because that's what that voice is there to do, right? A lot of the time, people forget how much power they have within. And it's just a matter of checking in, going within, asking yourself what you truly want, and finding the ways to make it happen for yourself without distraction.
Awesome. Great message. Do what
Yeah.
scares you. I think that's my
Do
that's
what
my favorite
scares
part of it.
you. Yeah, do what scares you. Because there's a lot of on the other side of that, there's like abundance, there's growth, there's there's a world. There's a
Absolutely.
whole world. Yeah.
This was great. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you
luck.
for having me. It was great.
It's a pleasure. Good luck with your event. I
Thank you so much.
can't wait to hear how it turns out and to see many more of them.
Yes. Thank you so much.